that and that. Welcome in, folks. Thank you for raiding in Stephanie's Tales. We have a couple of masters of the podcasting and Twitch streaming content production side of things here. We hope you're enjoying the con. My name's Jemma Hooper. I am hiccuping like crazy. I am a trans neurodivergent weirdo who writes and records music and other stuff and streams on Twitch. So that's me. I'm not the important person here. These gentlemen are. Please welcome Joe Compton and Joshua Pantalleresco, is it? Pantalleresco, sorry, I got close. Anyway, so welcome, guys. Please feel free to introduce yourselves. And Raiders, before we do that, Raiders, as Mez just mentioned, if you click on the stream link or the streamer link in the thing below the doohickey, or you can just click on the link I'm posting in chat, and that will get your view counted to my metrics, which is kind of one of the things we're trying to do here, is spread some love to streamers. There we go. So guys, introduce yourselves and we'll crack in.
And I'm Joe Compton, and
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Josh Pantalleresco. I write stuff and podcasts too. My podcast, Just Joshing, is approaching its 600th episode. It is a 2018 Aurora Award-winning show in which I interview authors and other creatives about life, the universe, and everything. I'm silent. How am I silent? I'm watching your Twitch stream anyways. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so I'm really awkward. Okay, I will ignore the Twitch stream from here on in. That'll just be a good idea. Anyways, I'm here to share my experiences with podcasting. I'll happily help you guys. What is a podcast? How it's done? At least they have to get started anyway. And I'm happy to share these experiences with you.
And I'm Joe Compton, and I run the online network called GoldieNow that has been around for about 4 years now. I have 1,600 hours of streaming content, and I do weekly shows, monthly shows, seasonal shows. I run more of like what's more of a broadcasting network, but that aspect of it is very much attuned to what goes on here at Twitch, and I do have a Twitch channel and run all those things visually. I do panel discussions. I do all kinds of different shows that I edit, that I record and edit, that I produce, and then I also do live streams as well. And I am an indie author and an indie filmmaker as well. So I am all like all of you out there. So hopefully.
Cool. Just doing shout outs for you gentlemen. Joe, your Go Indie podcast.
Go Indie Now.
Go Indie Now?
Mm-hmm.
Is your Twitch stream?
Yep, that's my Twitch stream. Just twitch.tv/Go Indie Now.
There we go. All right. So, yeah, that's quite a sizable little panel that my clip viewer is throwing up there, so nice one. Okay, so folks, if you have questions, you may feel free to type question in the format provided by... Oops. Let's try this again. There we go. So if you type question, colon and a space, anything after that will be captured by a bot, and I will pass those on, pass questions on to our esteemed panelists.
All right.
So let us proceed.
All right, so I'm going to take the lead early here. My name is Josh. I do podcasting. I've been doing podcast presentations for years as well, so I'm going to borrow a little bit from my presentation here. The very first question that's usually asked is, what is a podcast? The answer is, it's basically a broadcast audio-visual about literally anything. And I mean it. You look at podcasts, there are podcasts for everything. There are podcasts for falling asleep. There are podcasts that literally make weird sounds just for the sake of making weird sounds. There are cooking podcasts, there are watch-along podcasts, there are podcasts like mine which I interview other creatives, there are story podcasts. Podcast is a very broad term. It can literally be anything you want it to be. So I'm going to assume if you are here, you're interested in actually either producing a show or learning about how a podcast is made. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that real quick here. So the first thing is, my first piece of advice, and probably the biggest piece of advice I'm going to give the whole time. What excites you to talk about? We're all passionate, obsessive people, and we talk about a lot of different things. We all are interested. Some people are fascinated by, comic books. I'm a big comic book junkie. Some people love Star Trek. Some people love potatoes. It really, we all obsess over different things. And there are things we talk about, we love to talk about. And so my very first piece of advice for anyone wanting to do a podcast is, what are the things you love to either do or talk about? What are those things? Because if you're looking at this from a financial point of view, it might be a while before you get there. So you better be enthusiastic about what you're talking about, because it does take a while, usually. The second thing you might want to ask yourself is, how long do you want your show to be? Because every show hits a different audience. There are podcasts that last literally 10 minutes. There are podcasts that last literally 3 hours. My podcast in its current incarnation on a video level will go around 2 hours sometimes. But on an audio level, we'll never go above that. Yeah, I usually stick it within an hour, hour and a half. So I'm someone wants to do a workout podcast, someone that's doing a longish job, doesn't want to actually get bored too much. That's my general thing. But then there's podcasts that are 30 minutes. There are podcasts that are an hour. There are podcasts, you got to decide what that time frame is. It's important because it's going to be how you structure your show, right? So much like crafting a story, crafting a podcast is very much that process. There's an act 1, an act 2, an act 3 of some form. There's a formula to it of some kind. Usually there's an intro, usually, not always, but there usually is. There's their content, the main content of your show. Sponsorships, sometimes they're peppered at the beginning, sometimes they're peppered at the end, but there's usually some form of sponsorships there as well. And then at the end of the show, there's a closing outro, intro. Like on my audio, every episode ends with Josh Shush. A friend of mine actually records that little sound, that recorded that sound effect for me for years. I took it off for literally one episode, and someone who's been listening to my podcast goes, no, that stays in. That's awesome. It's awesome. It's there. So it's never left, and it will never leave the audio show as long as I do them. It's just part of the show. It always will be. Now, I've been recently switching to video. I'm playing with my formula a little bit more. It's more, it's very closer to, I would say, what Joe Rogan does with the podcast in terms of we just get into the conversation, we have a conversation. I still do an outro, but there is no Josh Josh. I got to get her on the show to do the Josh Josh, now that I think about it. It's actually kind of an important thing. But the whole point is, if you're going to start, you have to structure I think time is one of the more crucial things in a podcast, because it's once you know what you want to talk about, once you kind of know how much time, you can figure out your format for the show. A 10-minute interview show is very much a question and answer show, which can be a lot of fun. A show like mine, I will not do question and answers. I'm going to be talking to my guest for a long, extended period of time, because talking feels natural, a lot more natural than questions once you get past about 15 minutes, right? Then there's like panel shows. Good panel shows, I think the right sweet spot for them is about an hour. And, you know, it's one of those things where, again, just knowing that stuff will give you an idea of kind of how to build the house. So once you have your, like, what you want to talk about, once you have an idea how much time it's going to be, the next decision I ask is, what, like, are you going to be like a watch-along podcast? Watch-along podcasts are usually seasonal, which is not a bad format to be. Like, you do like maybe 20 episodes at a set period of time, you take a break, right? Or are you going to be continuous? Or if you're like me, you're insane, you do many episodes a week, right? Whatever your choice, the idea is you got to figure out what your consistency mode, like what is consistent enough that you're comfortable doing on a regular basis, because that is what your audience is going to eventually come to expect. So everything we're talking about here at the very beginning is what you're passionate about, what your time constraints, and what your audience's expectations. These are very important, and these are very fundamental parts of building a show. Now, assuming you answer those questions in your head, you can actually build a show about literally anything you want. If you notice, I'm not focusing a ton on content here, because the content, right, is going to be what you love. That's basically, I feel, the beyond the nuts and bolts. That's where the house is built together. It's going to be built around your content and, to a lesser extent, your charisma, right? How you project yourself in front of an audience, or to be seen or heard. Again, starting, if you have those questions, it's a lot easier to come up with that. And finally, once you have all that nailed down, the last decision you're going to want to make is, well, what do I want to do? Do you want to do an audio show? Do you want to go on Twitch? Do you want to go on YouTube? Do you want to go? There's a lot of mediums you can actually do a podcast show on. And there's an advantage of being on multiple of them at once. But again, you also got to make this decision too. Is this something you want to do as a hobby? Because that's also a different answer than, say, someone wants to do this professionally, right? That's very different in terms of equipment investment, in terms of like how committed you have to be to a show to make it work. There's a lot, like again, I'm trying to get you to be as specific as possible here, because the more specific you are, the more likely that show is going to last. But going from that point on, like I said, we're going to assume, for the sake of this discussion, because we are on Twitch, because we are on a video channel, that you're going to want a video output of some kind. And so my buddy here, Joe, is an expert at all that kind of video stuff. I'm still learning that stuff. He's been doing it for a long time. So I'm going to be good now and be quiet and let Joe take over for a little bit.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I completely agree with you on how to set things up and get things going. I think that's super important, to decide what you're going to do up front and how you're going to do it. I mean, there's several ways to approach the video aspect of this as well. The easiest form, and a lot of people get into this, to start with, is to go live and do a live stream. And then, that way you can feel your way through things, feel what timing it matters, how it goes through that. And you can also interact live with a crowd and build an audience through interaction. And then if you wanted to, at certain points, you can start to produce things where you record them ahead of time, and then you edit them down and put them out there for people. And then there's several of those ideas out there as well. And what you choose to use in terms of whether it's Zoom or Google Meet or StreamYard or, Restream, will determine on how you broadcast as well. And, my sage advice for anybody starting out is to pick one lane and stay in that lane. Don't try to expand too hard, too fast. One of the major mistakes that I've made in time is that I built an audience in one platform. YouTube is where I've built a lot of my audience, and I have a loyal, dedicated following there at YouTube. But then, obviously you want to reach out further, and Facebook is a popular way to reach out and stream on Facebook as you're streaming on YouTube. And then, of course, now Twitch as well here. So picking where you want to start with and build an audience, you have to remember that audience was there from the beginning, and they're there for you at that point right there. So if you expand and you go too far too fast, you're spreading yourself thin, and you're not going to build an audience consistently in that respect. So if you pick a way to broadcast, wherever you decide to go to, and you build that following, reward them for being loyal and stay there. And you're going to get frustrated because it takes time to build an audience. This is not something that happens overnight, as Josh mentioned. If you're in it for the reasons you want to be in it for, you have to decide what that is. If you're in it to be somebody who will get monetized and make money at actually doing it, have sponsors and all those things, you need to have a consistency with your audience and build an audience. And so you spreading yourself out is only going to hurt you in that respect and not keep you going. You have to be consistent too. I mean, you have to, if you're going to broadcast on Saturday night at 6 o'clock, you got to be there. Sometimes it's not always about the time. It's about the fact that I'm going to broadcast 3 times a week, and I tell my audience ahead of time I'm going to broadcast 3 times a week. Then you have to deliver. You have to be there. Your audience will expect that, and so in growing those expectations, you have to really be conscious of what you can give to this aspect of it as well, because you could overextend yourself in that respect as well. You can say, well, I'm going to go live 4 times a week. I have a friend who had a very popular show on here on Twitch, and he started out with 1 show a week, and then decided it was so popular that he was going to do 3 times a week, and it nearly killed him. I mean, he was struggling because after time, you start to talk about the same things, you have the same guests, and it doesn't pan out all the way that you want it to, or the people you're getting as guests are thinning, and so it was hard to keep maintaining. And then on certain days of the week are better than other certain days, and you can't predict that. That's not something that's predictable out there. People will tell you it is, but it's not. And so you can switch things up, you can try different things, but if you do that, you have to reward your audience and have a consistency for a little while. And if you don't, you're going to lose them very fast, because if they expect something and you don't deliver it, they're going to go on to the next thing. And as Josh mentioned, picking your content and what you're going to talk about is very important as well. But that all comes naturally sometimes too. Especially if you're doing like a live stream, you'll find that things don't always go the way you're supposed to go. Technology is a pain for a lot of people, and you'll have those issues. I do not fret about any of that, because that's going to happen. You're going to have no shows. You're going to have guests who don't talk. You're going to have all these things that happen. Roll with the punches. Don't, understand that we've all been there. We all go through it. It's all part of this process, and really, really, stay with it. That's my major advice. If you're really into it to do this, stay with it. And yeah, maybe after a couple of years you can reevaluate and see where you're at. But to be truthful, you've all heard that saying, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And so you have to really focus in on a game plan. I created a 5-year plan for myself. I know that Josh has something similar, some idea of what he wants to do and how he wants to do it, and he's grown it exponentially through that. And I've done the same, you know. And you also have to realize that these systems that you're running on Twitch, YouTube, they have algorithms, they have things that you're going to have to learn and struggle through and figure out, because those things can be tough to get around, especially if you're a small channel starting out. But the thing is that if you consistently do what you're supposed to do and you learn, you know, go watch other shows, go watch things about how to broadcast on YouTube, how to do algorithm stuff, and really take all that in and apply it to what you're doing and who you are, and see if that's going to help you along the way. There's lots of things you can do for that. There's a lot of things you can also do to better your show and give it a quality. You know, get a good mic, get a good camera, get a overlay that you can post, like what you're seeing here on Twitch with StoryGirl's channel. You can put that together, and it's pretty easy to do all of that. There's many places you can do. You can do, you know, like an overlay you can do on Canva, you can do on PicMonkey. There's all kinds of different places you can do these things and create that atmosphere. And if you do that right off the bat, people are going to respond to that as well. So I do several shows that I do live. I do ones that I record, and all of them, you know, I try to keep a consistency of time with, as Josh mentioned. You know, I try and really hit a mark. And so I'll record, if I'm recording something, I'll record a little bit over that so I can have stuff to edit down to a certain point. And all that extra stuff that you get, you can use for marketing, and you could use social media to market as well. You know, using Instagram, Twitch is Twitch. You can clip on Twitch, and you can throw clips out there. The same with YouTube. There's many strategies to how to proceed with this. But like I said, the most important thing is to pick a lane and stay in it for a while, and then as you grow, you can grow outward instead of having to come back, which is the mistake that I made. I went outward, and I tried to single out certain spaces too. Like I would only do certain things on Facebook and do certain things on YouTube, and then I got greedy and wanted to do it all on everything, and and I lost some audience for doing that. So I've slowly been gaining them back, and I realized that I was one of the ones who stayed on YouTube when everybody abandoned it. So I was still there. I didn't, sometimes things you don't pay mind to, and you think, okay, well then YouTube's not really happening right now, so I'm going to go try Twitch and do that for a while. And so consistency is really key. That's how I feel. You're muted.
There we go. I got the microphone back. Yay! I know what I'm doing. I swear. No, so like when I made my show to go into video, I have a YouTube channel, but it's secondary to me because right. I just look at it. That was a decision I made a long time ago about YouTube. It's just like, it's cool, but I don't necessarily want it. Now, some people might think I'm crazy for that. But as Joe so eloquently pointed out, I can only focus on so many things at a time. I have an audio platform, I have Twitch, and and then when I'm not doing that, I'm actually trying to write books. And you gotta make your decisions on where your time is most valuable. Absolutely. So yeah.
And for you, you started with the audio and you ran it to where you could run it no more, to a point. You got to a point where you had to make a decision to move and leap forward. And that's kind of how I would say that's the right approach to this idea.
Well, actually, the thing that I think we're gonna mention here, because Joe made the mistake of saying leap, what Joe was trying to do is what is called scaling. So to grow your audience, one of the big things you have to do is scale. Now, I've noticed this ever since I've gone on Twitch and I've been linking my Twitch and my audio numbers have gone up exponentially.
Yeah.
Right. It's not unusual for me to see an episode get 100 downloads within a couple days. Whereas that might take a little while. No, it's not taking that so long at all anymore. It's actually a much more regular thing. Part of that too, in my case though, is also networking. Because I am an interview show, I know a lot of people, and apparently I'm good at what I do because I make fans along the way, and they do support me, and I'm very grateful for that. But that's the thing. Like, there comes a point, I'm going to talk strictly on the money end of things. You're going to want to eventually scale your channel.
Yeah.
And the strategies to do that, there's like the organic ones we're going to talk about right now, because I'm about a month from trying some of the more inorganic ways of expanding, and I'm dreading it because I'm dreading it because I know this is going to be a bit of a money pit, and I'm like, God help me, but that's okay. That's where I'm at. But if you're going to scale naturally organically, the best place to start is your mailing list. Yeah. I say that as a guy who doesn't really do a newsletter, and I know that sounds very hypocritical, but the truth of the matter is the people that support you, right, are going to be the people that are going to spread the word about you. That's just how it works. So you start with your newsletter, you start with your audience, wherever your audience is. Right. So Joe wanted to go back and become Grandmaster of Twitch some point down the road, which I'm sure he will try again at some point. He will do it much more cautiously. He will say, YouTube's like, hey, I'm going to Twitch. I'd really appreciate it if people followed me there. I'm not going to do what I did last time with YouTube. YouTube content is here, and that's great, but I'm doing it Twitch, and you'll link both together a lot more. There is the good thing about YouTube and Twitch is you can cross-link relatively easily between the platforms, but you're scaling. I have an audio presence. I'm on virtually every audio network, but I also have Twitch, which is creating another network and another community. Basically, I'm tapping into two different audiences when I'm doing that, and as a result, my audience specifically, is growing. Right? That's how that works. And so that's one way. Multiple platforms is a method of scaling. It starts with new newsletters. It goes to the platforms you choose to do. In my case, I was very happy with what I was doing with the audio, but because I was doing the audio much, much more regularly, I hit a wall of how many people were downloading, and I had an audience, but it was a solid audience. Yeah. But it wasn't growing anymore, and I wanted to figure out how to get around that. For me, that was Twitch. Twitch is starting to grow again. It's starting to do more things because even if nothing else, people are listening to my show just to feel what the Twitch show is going to be like, which is actually really cool and a whole side thing. So that's how you scale. You go on multiple platforms. You start doing them. You don't make them exclusive to each other, which I think is the mistake Joe is talking about. But again, same thing. Choose wisely.
But you could use all those to your advantage in different ways too, right? I mean, don't ignore the social media and the growing social medias that come along, like the TikToks and the Snapchats and stuff like that. You can use all that to your advantage if you're savvy. I mean, you have to put in a lot of time and invest a lot of time, which is, some of the things that we talk about is, what's valuable to me. Is this really valuable to waste my time on it? But you can use the Instagram format to do clips and promote, stills of your place of your podcast, and you can use Facebook to embrace an audience and bring them in. Oh, absolutely. And that's part of the scaling that you should be doing as well.
Well, absolutely no. What I'm doing next, like the next thing I'm going to be doing, actually, the next two things I'm going to be doing is I'm getting a better microphone and I'm getting a better stuff. And I'm going to do a few episodes with the new stuff. When I get to that point, when the new stuff's starting to come, then I'm going to be looking at both Amazon, because since I'm on Twitch anyway, I might as well worship my Amazon overlords anyway. But
you can't escape the Zon.
yeah, exactly. So I have my Amazon overlords, but also in a more serious note, like my audience is readers.
Yeah.
Right? Readers and writers that are trying to figure out their career path. That's my audience. So it makes sense that I do it. It makes sense that I do an Amazon ad. It just makes sense that I do an Amazon ad, because Amazon's my audience.
So that's super important too. It's finding your audience and knowing who they are and grabbing.
Actually, and that's the next point I'm going to make. So inorganic scaling is ads. And everybody's gonna be like, "Oh God!" It's like, but no, you're gonna have to do it. Like we all, that's something you gotta just. If you're serious about turning this into a money-making empire, you're gonna have to invest in yourself. But that's regardless of what you decide to do in terms of equipment, technology. That doesn't really matter. Here's what matters: how are you gonna get the word out? So again, people talking to other people about how awesome your show is a great start. But the next step at that point is, okay, I gotta figure out Facebook ads.
Yeah.
I got to figure out Amazon ads. Now. I got to figure out, but again, for me, I know kind of who I want to hit, and my target audience is going to be Amazon, because Amazon to me is readers and writers, and that's who I want to listen to my show, is readers and writers. So it makes sense that I'm there, right? I might have to figure out, because I interview practically everybody, that maybe I got to figure out what's a good, maybe I have to do a different hook for romance writers, maybe I have to do different hooks and that's going to be part of my experimental process, is who's best tailored to come to me.
Yeah, and analytics play a big role in that as well. Figuring out, watching how things work for you. Like if you put a Facebook ad out there, they give you the stats. They give you the idea of what worked, when it worked, how it worked. They give you the time that most people were viewing it. They give you, if it was men and women, if it was a certain age group, they give you all these things that you can use as tools to kind of guide yourself through the product. Like when I first started doing live shows, my thing was I would try one on an 8 o'clock time period and then do another one at a 9 o'clock and do this one on a different day. On this day I would do this time and this time, and I would try to find my footing doing that. And that's okay as long as you're consistently, as long as you're consistently broadcasting on the day you tell people you're going to broadcast. If you're going to do a show on Friday, maybe it'd be at 8 o'clock. It can also be at 7. It can be at 10. And then you could find which the audience gravitates toward, and then you can go forward with that consistency too, and really that's how you develop consistency, is finding that footing. And the only way to do that is to go for it and try it, because there's no right reason or wrong reason, because we all have different audiences. We all reach different things because we're doing different things, right? And that's the hope of everything, is that your whatever niche you're trying to attain to, you're the one getting that audience at that time period, and that's what you're trying to figure out, and the only way to do that is to do it. And
guys, just a quick one. We do have a question that is kind of relevant to the topic you've just been talking about, and that is, how do you go about determining whether lack of growth is due to the quality of the show versus SEO, where you're aiming at a particular audience or length? How do you prioritize which area to work on?
So at the very, I'm just going to talk from my audio experience. At the very beginning, I almost would say it's exclusively SEO, because you're new, like you're brand spanking new. You're not going to get registered very much. Like my numbers for my first few episodes are terrible. Like they are absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Because so it depends on so I guess the first part of that, to answer your question, where are you in the process?
Yeah.
Because that's a big key. Like if you're at the very beginning,
don't worry about it.
Yeah. Not even a little bit. Just get the important thing at the very beginning is get your content on a regular basis. Whatever regular looks like for you, do that.
And then, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, let's say you got to me where I did 400 episodes. I've won my awards. I've had my sponsorships. And I'm like, okay, I want to get more sponsorships. How do I do that?
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, well, I have to get my numbers to here.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that? And so that's where it gets... that's when the SEO and quality of the show. I've done nearly 600 episodes, so I don't have any new car smell. That's for lack of a better term. I just don't. So I've been around. There is an expectation with a certain parts of the audience that they have either tried my show, had an opinion about my show, have moved on.
Yeah. Or
it's been around so long, it's maybe there is a point also where you got to look at what you're doing and making a change, which is what I did when I hit about episode 4. I can't believe I can say it's episode 450. I was like, okay, I'm going video now, because I hadn't done video, and I've done, and for the most part they've been all videos, and it's been really an eye-opening experience, almost like a new learning experience again. And again, my numbers have hit a certain point and they've gone up. I gotta get more people watching it live because I have the affiliate numbers. I just don't have the live average yet. But once I hit that live average, I'll be an affiliate. So
yeah. So I would add 2 things to that idea. One, as Josh said, don't pay attention when you do have the new car smell. But the thing you can monitor is how much of the content are people watching. Like, all analytics will tell you, the most important thing about analytics and what YouTube really values is interaction. They value, how long somebody stays to watch the show, and you can measure all of those analytics, and that will keep you, if you've got consistently people watching all the way through, you're doing something right, and you just got to stay with it. If people are taking 15 seconds, or if your average time is like a minute and you have a 30-minute video and there's like 12 views and they're all a minute long because you're averaging a minute, then you may want to think about retooling it, changing it up, doing something different. But even with that all comes with time too, and the consistency. And the other thing you'll find, I'm sure Josh will back me up on this, is that once you get a consistent audience, they'll go back to the stuff that you didn't like, that you didn't have good numbers for before. I get it all the time on my analytics. I can't believe there's people watching GoldieNow episode 1 still. I get one or 2 views on that every single week almost, and it's like wow, people go all the way back. I mean, I don't even know how you find that on my channel anymore.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about like the quote unquote author business model. This is something everybody I think needs to understand about the author business model. Upfront sales, hitting bestseller lists are really cool, but the real money in writing has always been your backlist. It's always been the backlist, because what happens is someone discovers you. They like what you do, and it's like, oh my God, what else has he done or she done, right? Mm-hmm. Or they done, depending on your pronoun. Mm-hmm. And the thing that needs to be remembered is, okay, so my most popular episodes interviewed my dad. My dad's a very interesting guy, and I have thousands and thousands of hits. The average time there is always really good, regardless. I mean, of how many hits. Now, I'm very happy that my other stuff is starting to get hits now, because I can find all my things in one spot.
Right.
But it still gets those hits on a regular basis, just based on the fact that I've been around so long. Now, I'm not as YouTube focused. I'm more Twitch focused. So right now my immediate goal is to get to affiliate, so I can access more of the analytics parts of Twitch.
Right.
So I can actually tool my stuff better. Because I will say one thing about YouTube that I do know, and I've been seeing this a lot. When you do clips and you do a full show, I'm noticing that a lot of channels are creating 2 separate channels. Yeah. One just for clips, one just for the episodes, because they hit different audiences. Yeah. And a lot of channels that have plateaued, when they've split their content up into 2, it has actually generated more hits for both channels. Yeah. So, every platform, I imagine, is a little different. So I can't say that works for Twitch, because Twitch kind of encourages you to make clips, which makes sense too.
Yeah. So. And the other thing is that with what you're doing exactly the model that we've set forth with Twitch, in that you're experimenting. You're doing the drink and draw stuff, the stuff you didn't do on audio. You're trying different things to get your footing down, to see what works and doesn't work, and you're having fun doing that. Again, it's almost like rebirthing yourself in this model, right? And so I think that is something that you have to constantly be doing too. If you want to gain if you get an audience, evolve from that. Try different things out. Try something you've always wanted to do on your channel. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but if you don't, that's the moment that you've got something. Is if people are watching and then they go to the other thing and watch that as well, and you then start to gain audiences, because like Josh said, audiences like different things too. So that you may be missing out on that part of your audience that's kind of bored by what you've been doing consistently now, but they like the drink and draw thing, so they're going to go and hang out there and do that, and then you gain them back to what you're doing before, and then like I was saying, I constantly have videos that get hits on them that you could spend 10 minutes scrolling on my channel, you wouldn't find them, but somehow, some way they get seen, and that's because the YouTube algorithm is actually working for you. And because once that person watches a video all the way through, they're going to get recommended other videos that are popular from you. So like my episode 1, which you couldn't find if you scrolled for it, but because you watched a recent video of mine all the way through, episode 1, which is one of the higher viewed episodes I have on my my channel, that gets rebooted and sent to you on your recommended page, because that's one of the more highlighted ones, and you liked what I did on this, you're going to like what I did on this one. That's kind of how the algorithm works a little bit. So you can use all that to your advantage and not worry about just get going and putting out content, and then let all of that naturally take its course, because it will ultimately, if you're doing something right.
And I think we answered the question. So I guess this is the thing. We can to the audience out there, we can definitely horse around for another 10 minutes or so. But what we would like to do is help you guys out as much as you can. So if you guys have any questions right now, that would be great. We'll give you guys a couple minutes to ask them whatever you want to ask, and we'll do our best to answer in the time we have left. If not, I'm going to heckle Joe, but when he can come on and do a drink and draw. So, it's up to you guys.
The thing that we talk about every time when we talk about this.
Yeah, but I actually have a day in mind for you, so it's like,
okay.
So we'll do this on the air if no one else.
Yeah, you just gotta tell me when. I can tell you if I'm available or not. But yeah, for you, I probably would be. You know that. So.
Yeah. So we're just gonna give it a few minutes and let everybody. If there's any questions, anything you want, that this is the time to do it. So, and
the one thing I will say too, just to add a little bit of not so dead air is do what you want to do. This is your time to figure this out. When you're first starting, if you're just starting, have fun with it. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. If you're not having fun, why do it? I mean, even if you're a monetized channel at some point, if you're bored, if you're not doing it, it shows. People will pick that up very, very quickly, and you'll lose ground instead of gaining it. So make sure you're doing something you really love, because that shines through exponentially. That is the thing. The key to being successful is people realize that, hey, you really like doing this.
Yes. Well, no. At the end of the day, like people recognize I guess this is the last point I'm going to make, and this is something especially if you're interviewing people, be authentic. Like that, like the reason why I mentioned, like, pick the thing you love to talk about more than anything else, because you have a better chance of conveying who you are to your audience. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, this is about your brand as an author, creator, whatever the case may be. And that's kind of like, that's what it's all about. Like, your credibility is your authenticity, and that is true not just with writing but with any business. So find that thing you love. It can literally be beads. It could be AD. You can talk about ADHD because it's a cause you believe in, a mental health issue you want to bring forward into the world. If you want to do, like, talk about vanilla ice cream. Listen, I don't know anyone who hates ice cream. That's just saying. I don't know.
Too. I mean, look, I grew up in the '80s. I'm an old guy, so I could, if you had told me in 15, 20 years, actually 30, maybe more like 30, 40
30,
years, that there would be a place where on video you could watch people play D&D, and you could watch people play video games, and you could watch people draw stuff and write stuff, and it would be the most interesting thing you've ever seen in your entire life, and you gravitated toward it. I would have said you are fucking crazy, you know?
That's right. That's right.
Because there's no way that's interesting to everybody, and yet it is. And that's how Twitch became Twitch, you know?
Exactly.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions in queue. The first one is, Robson Carter wonders if you've had any experience with doing narrative podcasts.
A little bit. So when the pandemic started, I decided that I was going to channel my inner C.S. Lewis, and I read my novel, which hadn't been released yet, called The Cloud Diver, and I did it once a week. It was once a week episode. I actually had authors come on and read their own works as well throughout. People like Fonda Lee, Joe here was one of them. I had Talina Winters. I had Sarah Johnson, I had Jim Jack. I had a really cool list of people that would just come in. I think my personal favorite one was the Josephine Lore poetry slam album I did for like a half hour. Brian Tan actually took over my show one episode. I let him do it just because it was just a neat idea. Narrative podcasts are actually, I think, I'm a big fan of The Shadow, like an old school radio program. Narrative podcasts at their best are on par with that, and there's some great ones out there. They are a lot of work. One thing I will absolutely say, if you want to do a really good high quality show, mine wasn't always the best quality. I'll be the first to admit it, because I was just churning it out on the fly. But when I did my second one, which was Alice in Wonderland, I made a lot more effort on reading Alice. I think it showed it in the final result. I had less guests, but my listenership went up as I kept reading Alice. I'm actually contemplating doing Through the Looking Glass, but I'm not sure where to put it. That might be something I do as a Patreon, because it's just I don't have the room on my regular schedule right now for it, or I'd probably be doing them. They are a lot of work, but they can be incredible fun, and they're a really cool way to express the story that you otherwise wouldn't, because sound's a very powerful medium.
Cool. Thank you, Josh. Joe?
Look, I was on a panel earlier, it was about screenwriting, and we got into actually audio drama, and that idea that, you know, this is becoming back, you know, tenfold, you know, the War of the Worlds kind of idea, and you know, bringing that to a new level with audio. Audio is so powerful because we all commute, we all you know, we're all either at the gym. There's some point in our lives where we're multitasking and we just want to have something in the background. All of those things are very, very capable with audio, and so that is what is gravitating everybody toward that. And I think that if you do something like that, the one thing that Josh mentioned that I totally agree with, well, I agree with everything he said, but the one thing that really stuck out to me is it's quality over quantity with audio. You know, quality matters in audio a tremendous amount, because if you don't have the quality and the guy next to you does, they're going to go to the guy next to you, you know? And so you have to invest. If you're going to do something like that, you have to commit to it, first of all, and commit to it all the way through. You can't stop halfway through, because, again, if you stop, you're stunting your growth in your audience. And so you have to commit to it, as Josh did. Josh committed to it all the way through, whether it was working or not. He did it, and he committed all the way until he was done with the book. And that is important. So you have to commit to it, and you have to try your best. I know it's hard because it's expensive, but there's ways you can make things. There's Audacity out there. Audacity is a great program that you can use to help, you know, keep the quality up and things of that nature.
In make it, like, you can use your narrative to make an audiobook. That is another topic entirely on its own. Yeah. But I will say this: there are a lot of good YouTube videos to actually help you do it and do it cheaply. Yeah. I will say, however, it is a lot of time. So you got to be really committed to it. Now, if you were like me the first time, it's okay to screw it up. If you're just trying to do it for the sake of learning, people will forgive you. But you got to be, but again, go in there with the expectation to do the best quality possible.
But you also had a built-in audience, so your audience is a little bit more forgiving because you built it in. Like I was saying before, if you're out there and you've got a built-in audience, try new things. That's something you tried that was new, and that's helpful too. So if you're first time doing, if that's what you're concentrating on, and that's the thing you're going to start with, you should really start with the quality, because that's how you're going to get the audience. So
cool. Next question. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we'll try and get through these last two fairly quickly. Is it gauche to go out and approach people for interviews? I do a book review podcast and thinking of approaching the authors of the books I review. Within reason, of course. He wouldn't go asking Stephen King. That was from Terry Talk section.
So I'm going to disagree with Terry in one thing. You should ask Stephen King.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. No. Like I'm gonna tell a really cool story.
What's it gonna tell you? No.
well, that's ultimately yes. But I'm gonna tell a really cool story here. I got to meet, when I was in Vancouver, I got to meet Spider Robinson for the very first time. Like, literally, I gave Spider his new Aurora pen that night. I think that's really cool. Spider Robinson's like an incredible legend in the science fiction community. He did a really cool Beatles concert. I actually got to meet him, which is like, wow, I met Spider Robinson. That's like, whoa. Anyway, the next day, he's checking out of the hotel. He's going back home, and he's looking for directions. And I'm like, well, what's the worst you can do? You can only say no. So I went up to him and gave him the directions he needed, and then I asked him if he'd be willing to come on my show. I got one of the coolest interviews of all time with Spider Robinson. There's the White House story alone made me laugh so hard. I would tell you, never be afraid to ask any author if you want to do the show. The worst they can tell you is no, and go. Look, I've had Kelly Armstrong on my show. She's not quite Stephen King. That's pretty damn high on the totem pole. And so go for it. Like, just ask anybody you want to talk to. You never know. They might say yes. By the way, just my personal wish list. I'm still trying to do this. Get Brandon Sanderson to come play Magic on my podcast. I'm trying. I don't care. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had David Cross. I've had Emily Bett Ricards on my shows. Done interviews with a lot of them. I've had opportunities to ask them to do the longer form interviews that I've done and the longer shows, and most of them are very apt to do it. And yeah, I've heard no response before. I email people all day long asking them if they want to do it, and I don't get a response back, or I get a not at this time response, and then you follow up with them later and they don't respond after that. But look, you never know. I think most people don't do it because they're afraid they're going to get yes, and that's a real hard. So you have to ask yourself, if you're going to do it, you have to commit to doing it.
So I'm going to take one last story here. So just for guys doing, how do I get Mr. King with my audience of nobody to come on the show? So I got Stephanie Phillips, who's writing Harley Quinn for DC Comics, on my show next Thursday. You know how I got her to come on the show? This is what I said to her. This is exactly what I said. Stephanie, am I cool enough to interview you for my podcast? Her response was, the question should be, am I cool enough to come on your show?
Yeah.
And start from there. Never be afraid to ask. It's also all on how you ask, right? Yeah. So I was so just some advice, go for it. You never know. Sometimes it's not about the audience, it's about the experience.
And relate and be relatable to that, say, hey, look, if I know this person, that person knows this. Hey, I interviewed that person. Oh, cool. Then they feel comfortable about talking to you as well. So,
yep. Yeah. One final question. You've mentioned multiple times, if and when you find yourself with an audience, XYZ, how are you defining an audience here? 12 regular listeners, 100, 1,000? I mean, I can probably throw my two cents.
The answer's all of the above.
Yeah. Like one person is an audience.
Yeah. No, the answer's all of the above. I guess the question you should ask yourself, honestly, is what's your goal?
Yeah.
My goal is 1,000 listeners. That's my goal. So at 1,000 listeners, I can monetize my podcast fairly comfortably at 1,000. I get 300 downloads a week right now, which is really cool. I still get other plays. So I'm actually getting closer to I'm inching closer and closer and closer. I've hit that, what I call the organic wall. I have to do some inorganic stuff, but I got to invest in myself more first to do it. But that's the audience I want. Now I might hit bigger. I might get to 999. You know what? I'm going to be okay with 900. I'm just saying, right? So you gotta like, an audience is an audience, and it doesn't matter how big or small it is. They're listening to you.
Yeah,
that's cool. Never take that for granted, even if it's just one person.
Yeah. Especially if they're going all the way to the end with you. You know, that's the key right there. Is like having somebody who stays with you all the way, and they come and they're live with you. They're there the first time you put it out there, and then they're there the whole time. You have to value that as gold, and take every one of those you can get, and just hold on to it and hug it and say thank you so much, and be humble about it the whole way, because they're taking their time to invest in you, and you have to appreciate that as much as, you know, you taking the time to put it out there. And so I think that's super important. And like Josh said, it's defined by who you want to be. So decide that right off the bat and say, okay, I'm going to be this person, or I'm going to be this goal. I'm going to reach this goal, and do your best to get there, and, you know, be accepting of what comes your way, because ultimately it's never what it looks like. So
cool. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to give you a quick lightning round question. 3 bullet points on ways to monetize your podcast.
Sponsorships, crowdfunding, and honestly, freelancing opportunities. The last one I'm just going to touch on super quick, hard. So I interview people. I have access to a ton of information based on the conversations I've had. Get their permission, obviously, but there's lots of nuggets there. I have quietly been building myself up as a freelancer through my podcast. You got access to a ton of information when you're doing like an interview. And honestly, even let's say you're doing a cooking show, you're an expert. Let's say it's you're cooking with rice. There are magazines that do rice.
Yeah.
There literally are. I'm not kidding. So whatever you do, whatever your niche is, whatever that niche is your podcast is, you can get writing work in that same niche.
Cool.
I will add one to that. I agree with all 3 of those. I will add one to that, and that is relationships. Build relationships with people who can help you grow and you know, network. You know, I have PR agents that I deal with all the time who get me gigs and get me people, and those people are invaluable to me because they believe in me and I believe in them, and we work together. And those relationships are invaluable if you can get them.
Cool. Folks, please give Joe and Josh a big round of applause. We do kind of have to wrap things up here. I will give you both a final shout out in the chat, and we'll see what random clip plays this time.
So I'm going to say this. Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening, and hearing my big mouth for over an hour. If you like what I do my shows usually 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, generally. I've become 5 days a week. I don't know how. I just did. I have guests of all realms of the spectrum in terms of new writers, established writers, also people doing really cool gigs. I also do generally drinking draws on Fridays. That hasn't happened in a little while, but that's going to be starting up again really soon. And I definitely have a gentleman to talk about being one of my drawing guests to return. That all said, everybody, thank you for watching and listening. Check JustJoshingPodcast on Twitch. Hit the subscribe. Come watch me live. Let me get to affiliate.
Nice. And I'm Joe Compton, run GoldieNow. YouTube.com/GoldieNow is a great place to find us. And we do a Sunday show every Sunday at noon Eastern time. It's This Week in Indies. It's a variety show for the most part. I have a review. I have segments in there, and I do panel discussions as well. That's every Sunday. I'm consistent with that show. Every Friday, we try to go live with a different type of show, usually around 10 p.m. Eastern time. I do that on my YouTube channel and also on Facebook. And Facebook.com/GoldieNow is our Facebook page where you can find about us. And we're everywhere, so check us out. And I would love for you to subscribe, like, and comment on anything that you see for us. We would really, really love that. And thank you so much for being here and listening to us rant.
Okay, thank you so much, guys, and thank you to the audience. Thank you for Galena for raiding in with your lovely viewers. We are now going to raid out to Scott Wright's stuff. But before we do, just everyone please drop a clap or a love heart or something like that in for the boys. They've been really good. They've provided a crap ton of information, and they've done really well. So thank you again, gents. We will catch you hopefully, or I will hopefully get to catch you another time. Maybe I can come on a podcast soon. Who knows?
I'd love to have you.
I would love that, Jemma. Anytime.
Yeah. I'd love to have you.
Okay. Just proving the hey, maybe you ask, maybe you get a yes.
Yeah, there you go.
And you get a yes. Like, we'll have to talk scheduling and available. What part of the world are you in, if you don't mind my asking? Because that would. Pardon?
I'm in Adelaide, South Australia.
Okay, so it'll definitely have to be on a weekend episode for me, but definitely would love to have you.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, we'll get the raid underway. Thank you again, everyone. Also, please, if you get a chance, make an opportunity to send a message of thanks to our wonderful conference admin team. They have done a fantastic job, and we are on the way out. So thank you again, all. Appreciate you all. Much love, and please come and say hello to Scott Wright's stuff, who is where. It's describing random locations with GeoGuessr is the name of his stream.
Cool.
So let's get our panel outro screen up. Thank you again, guys, and I'll catch you another time.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll give it a minute to wrap up and say goodbye. But hey, nice to see you.